The hush in the Jedi Council chamber was profound, almost sacred, broken only by the hum of the city far below. Master Yoda's gaze was distant, thoughtful. Ki-Adi-Mundi's brow was furrowed in silent contemplation. And then there was Mace Windu, his presence like a rock, unyielding. He watched the door through which the boy, Anakin Skywalker, had just passed. A boy radiating a raw, untamed power unlike anything they had ever felt. Qui-Gon Jinn, defiant even in supplication, stood before them, his voice a passionate tremor in the Force. He spoke of a prophecy, of a chosen one, of the will of the living Force itself guiding him to this child. And as Qui-Gon's words hung in the air, a deep chasm opened, not just between two Jedi Masters, but between a timeless tradition and a nascent destiny. For Mace Windu, the issue was not one of personal preference, nor was it a simple matter of a child's potential. It was about the very foundation of what it meant to be a Jedi. From his vantage point, rooted in centuries of collected wisdom and hard-won experience, Anakin Skywalker represented a profound risk, a challenge to the purity of their commitment. Think for a moment about the Jedi Code. It speaks of emotion, yet peace, of ignorance, yet knowledge, of passion, yet serenity. It is a path of absolute detachment, a philosophy honed over 1,000 generations to prevent the very kind of emotional entanglement that could lead a Jedi astray. And when Mace Windu looked at Anakin, he saw a child who, at 9 years old, was already deeply entangled. The primary concern was his age. Children were typically brought to the temple as infants, before they could even form coherent memories, before they developed the deep, abiding emotional connections that are so natural to human beings. This early separation, while seemingly stark, was a deliberate, necessary step. It allowed them to grow up within the embrace of the Jedi Order, learning to channel their innate empathy and compassion into universal service, rather than focusing it on singular personal bonds. Anakin, however, had lived 9 years in the world. He had a home, a life, and, crucially, a mother whom he loved with every fiber of his being. This bond, so fundamental and powerful, was precisely the kind of attachment the Jedi Code sought to transcend. For Mace Windu, this wasn't a minor hurdle. It was a structural flaw. How could a mind already shaped by such profound personal love, such deep-seated fear of loss, truly commit itself to the selfless, universal love demanded of a Jedi? The very wellspring of his compassion was, in Windu's view, a potential vulnerability, a conduit for the very darkness they sought to resist. Qui-Gon argued for the will of the Force, for the prophecy. He saw the extraordinary midichlorian count, the innate connection to the Force, as a sign that the rules, for once, should bend. But Mace Windu wasn't easily swayed by omens or prophecies, not when they directly challenged the bedrock principles that had preserved the Jedi Order for millennia. His stance wasn't personal. He didn't dislike Anakin. In fact, one could argue there was a profound sense of protective duty in his resistance. He was a guardian, not just of the Jedi Temple, but of the very soul of the Jedi Order. He saw it as his sacred obligation to uphold the traditions, the wisdom gleaned from countless Jedi who had walked the path before them. To compromise on the principle of detachment, even for a prophesied chosen one, would have been to admit a flaw in the very fabric of their existence. It would have set a precedent, suggesting that the code was malleable, subject to individual interpretation or extraordinary circumstance. And for Windu, this was a line he could not and would not cross. He understood the potential power in Anakin, but he also understood the potential danger. A danger that, in his view, was amplified by the very attachments Qui-Gon seemed so willing to overlook. The discussions in the council were likely intense, filled with the weight of destiny and the burden of responsibility. Ultimately, the council did relent, though not with deep reservations, and not with the tragic loss of Qui-Gon Jinn forcing their hand. But Mace Windu's initial instincts, those rooted in the preservation of the Jedi Code, lingered. His skepticism wasn't a failure of vision, but rather a steadfast adherence to principles that had stood the test of time. He was looking at Anakin not just as a boy, but as a potential vector for the very darkness that attachment and fear could cultivate. He was a sentinel, guarding the principles that he believed were the only true bulwark against the darkness. His stance was a somber echo of countless Jedi Masters who had for 1,000 generations chosen tradition over temptation and principle over expedient. What are your thoughts on Mace Windu's initial resistance to Anakin? Do you believe his adherence to the Jedi Code was justified, or do you think his stance was too rigid given the prophecy? Share your perspectives in the comments below. And if you found this exploration thought-provoking, please consider subscribing or following for more deep dives into the lore of a galaxy far, far away.